Hello listeners, Jordan here. I just want to let you know that you can listen to Nighttime early and ad-free on Amazon Music, included with Prime.
You are listening to the Nighttime Podcast.
Hello there listeners. Let me give you a little bit of a warning. Tonight's episode might just cause a few blushes out there. That's perfectly fine. Tonight, Nighttime is going to slip into something a little more provocative. We're going to be turning our usual show into a sex education workshop, but not the kind you had in high school. This one's going to come with a modern twist. So here's what happened. Recently, my frequent partner in crime, Madeleine Klein, mentioned to me that she has a cousin who's been doing some, well, shall we say, stimulating research. But don't worry. There's no need for lab coats or Bunsen burners in these experiments. This work is more about evening gowns and sultry R&B music. Madeleine's cousin, Bobbi Bidochka, is a Canadian sex sociologist and author who dives deep into the electrifying intersection of sex and technology. When I heard about Bobbi, I was intrigued. I had to learn more. And well, you're going to learn with me. Tonight, in this episode of Nighttime, Madeleine and I are going to sit down with sex sociologist Bobbi Bidochka for a conversation about love, sex, and robots. Just to start, Bobbi, let's get an introduction. Who are you? What is a sex sociologist? I believe that's the right term.
Yeah, that's the term. It's kind of it's a kind of a hard thing to say, but during COVID, I just took my master's in sociology, and what I was trying to do is gather information that I can convert into my second book. So what I did is all of the papers that I wrote for my master's ended up converting into book chapters. And so because I'm in the world of sex and sex research, everything had to be related to sex. So every single paper and every single class and every single presentation all had to be. So I end up with, it's not actually the official discipline, but all of my research and all of my work was sex related.
Okay. And you mentioned that you went into this in preparation for your second book. Just some background. What's your first book?
Sexual Intelligence in Business.
What does that mean?
It was my reaction to the Me Too movement. So, afterwards, I'm a woman trying to build a business. Although I was actually working at the University of McGill at the time, but I need male mentors. You need, men are in positions of power and authority, and also I just enjoy men. I like men. I like being friends with men. And it just got weird. Everyone didn't kind of what to do, what to say. Can I compliment you on your shirt? Even woman to woman, because some of the workplaces even put a policy, you can't make a comment about somebody's appearance, no matter how nice you do it. It's just everything was zip it up. People just didn't know what to do, what to say. And I believe that sex does not stay in the bedroom. It comes with you throughout the day. And it comes with you to the workplace. And this is why we have sexual harassment. I could talk all day on the topic, but the idea of the book is addressing the issue that you can't just write policy and expect that to work. So how do we eliminate sexual harassment without eliminating the natural organic relationships that form in the workplace? I happen to work a lot. I don't have hobbies. I just work. And so if you can't meet people in your environment, people are going to do that anyways. The book is aiming to provide people with tools about how can I manage sort of what's going on here in these environments, and how can I manage this in a way that, you can still have opportunities to meet people without, falling into some kind of sexual harassment hoo-ha.
Interesting.
So that's basically, there's a couple other bits in there too. I try to help women with negotiating skills, because if you can negotiate, you need to sort of negotiate through these types of interactions. If you're in the professional environment and someone's, say, try to ask you out on a date or made some kind of move and you're not comfortable with that, the best thing to do is to nip that in the bud, address it right away. don't pretend, don't shrug it off. But a lot of people just don't have the tools. Like, what should I say? How should I say it so
Mm.
that I don't fuck up this relationship because I have to work with this person. They're sitting beside me, right? So yeah, there's lots of juicy bits in there to help people sort of figure out how do I become more sexually intelligent outside of the bedroom.
Okay. So in hearing that, people get a pretty good sense of what you do and what your background is. But I am going to read a version of your professional bio for people who really want the dirt. So Bobbi Bidochka is the director of LaSha, the International Sexual Health and Wellness Research Institute, and an author, co-chair of the International Congress on Love and Sex with Robots, and a tech enthusiast who's helping to grow the Sextech community by leveraging research and reducing the stigma associated with sex tech. Now, sex tech is a new term for me. What is that? What is that talking about or referring to?
Well, in the startup world, you have different types of climate tech or hard tech. So they sort of nickname all the different sort of disciplines. And since now there's a lot of interaction with technology vis-a-vis sex, you can think about it from a porn point of view, from a camming point of view, replica, digital partners, all the way up to sex robots. You could even consider sexting to be fall under sex tech. So anything where sexually related things intersect with technology.
Mhm. I think my generation and probably a lot of people listening to this, when I was younger, the idea of sex tech would be like a rubber doll that you would like order and it would get mailed to your house or something like that. But
That
of
still
course,
happens.
it still happens. Okay. Well, I'm sure they're more advanced than the
Yeah.
kind we joked about as teenagers. But of course, that world has developed incredibly, and we'll get into some of the cutting edge of that world. But what led you to this? Now, I understand as a sociologist, getting into sex in the workplace and whatnot. But why sex tech? What led you there to technology relating to sex?
I mean, I was already sort of into tech stuff when I was working on my book and doing the research. And then in doing the research, I just fell in love with the subject matter. I'm like, this is really cool. I think I found my jam. Um, and then so right when the book got published, I was also working for a tech incubator. And so I was already in the tech world, building tech startups. And so it was kind of a nice evolution to go from a research institute to a technical one with the book. And so if you put those three things together, and then once I published my book, and I felt like, okay, I think this is the area where I can get into this, and I think this is it. I just started to do what I normally do, which is just go network and find people and meet people and start making friends and collaborations and all of that. And I got introduced to Dr. David Levy, who is the author of the book Love and Sex with Robots, and it was also part of his PhD. And we got connected, and they have this conference that was quite small at the time, and they were very happy to have a woman on the committee. So like, yeah, please join. And then after a couple of months, they basically handed the conference to me. It was like, okay, great. So here, go ahead and have it, because I was all gung ho anyways, and I have an events background
Okay.
as well. So that's sort of how it evolved like that.
All just came together.
Yeah, it converged.
When Madeline told me about her cousin with this fascinating background in research, it got me so excited. And here's why. The idea of like sex technology, especially the cutting edge of it, is something that kind of came up in my own life recently. I have a good friend who had an issue with their teenage daughter. Just wonder if this surprises you. Is they found the daughter, I think she's about 15. She was staying up really late at night, and was crashing at school the next day. She was irritable, and they couldn't understand why. They assumed she was up at night playing video games. So they were trying to do things like control how often she could get on the internet and all these sorts of things. They noticed then the data on her phone was going crazy because she wasn't going on the home Wi-Fi, instead was using her cell data at ungodly hours, like being up until 4 or 5 in the morning on a school night, and then,
Wow.
falling asleep in school kind of thing. Eventually they had like kind of the come to God speech with her, like, sit down, this has to stop. It's dysfunctional. What is going on? Why are you up all night? And what the teenage daughter revealed to them is that she downloaded an app where it's like an AI boyfriend, and you can communicate with your boyfriend or whatever online and tell them things about your life. And the app was so intelligent that it would have like what looked like very real conversations with with the person using the app. And not only that, it was creating like other characters that would be texting the user through this app and making like love triangles and all this dramatic stuff that would play out. And this 15-year-old using this app, pretty much shut down her own life and spent maybe 4 months, 5 months, all night using this app, and that was all of their social life. And it was eventually like that was revealed to the parents, and they had to deal with it after that. But when I heard this story, I thought like this is the most modern and bizarre thing I've ever heard. I've come to realize that that's actually not all that uncommon. Like I'm sure some of your sex tech work relates to these kind of conversations with AI and whatnot. Like, does this surprise you to hear this?
No, and I got to tell you, Jordan, the numbers are staggering.
Hmm.
I think that's going to be my fourth book, the third or fourth one. The
Okay.
data. Are you familiar with a billion wicked thoughts?
No, but I have a billion wicked thoughts.
I think it's about 13 years old now. And they did a whole scrub of all the internet searches because it's one thing to do a survey, which we do in research. We ask people to fill out surveys, but they don't always fill them out truthfully, and not because they're intentionally lying. But there's something called social bias. It's like they want to click the box that they think that they should, instead of the one. But when the doors are closed and you are on your Google and nobody else sees you, that's what truly reveals what people are looking for. And the just the platforms that I know of, Pornhub, Live Jasmine, some of the top platforms, 50 million, 100 million hits a month. Like it's staggering. It's staggering the amount of sex toys that are sold. It's the numbers are staggering. Like the data doesn't lie. Everybody's into it, but more and more, I'd say the last 4 years, the idea, especially with Replica, when Replica got uh, really ubiquitous, and then they tried to shut down the sexual side of it about 2 years ago, and they had huge backlash from the community, like in the millions. People are
What
like, "This
what
is
is
the
replica?
relationship I have." Replica is it's an app where you design an avatar that you have a relationship with, like a friend or a
Okay.
lover, whatever you want them to be. You could make them a family member if you wanted. Maybe it's like someone who died, your brother died when you were young, and you still want to talk to him.
Wow.
But it's mostly used for relationships, like proper relationships, and it's very appealing.
Mhm.
Um, I I haven't engaged with that myself. Not for any ethical reasons, just for just lack of time. Um, but yeah, I mean, people really are using a lot of these technologies to have relationships, especially in it's mostly in North America because our capitalistic neoliberal project has been kind of a failure, and social media is now really reflecting. I don't blame social media. Social media is a mirror to the loneliness epidemic that's going on in North America.
What you talked about that replica app, which could very well be what my friend's daughter was dealing with, because that sounds a lot like it. But when you think of like the cutting edge of sex technology, you mentioned a few things there. But what are you researching, or what is kind of the emerging issue that is capturing your attention as far as the actual
Uh,
technology?
well, the research that we do is for the institute is focused on sex tech and sex work vis-a-vis Byborg Enterprises and the different camming and other types of porn sites and whatnot that they have. And so we look into things like we've done a massive survey with thousands of participants with the Kinsey Institute, just asking both the models, so they call them models because sex work's actually illegal, so they have to be called models. And so we surveyed them and the members who joined and they pay to interact with these models. And what's interesting coming out of that research is how much education that the members feel that they get. They learn how to do things. They learn how to communicate, even so they sort of practice with the model and then take that into their real life. And some have come back to say that their relationships have improved.
Wow.
Sometimes the models sort of act as a therapist a lot of the time. So a lot of the members that stay longer, of course, there's usually a gratification moment, but those moments are rather not too long. But they often stay on for much longer, sometimes hours and hours, and sometimes overnight. And they're willing to pay, and it's not free. So they develop real relationships with people on both sides. Like you get to know a person. So some people feel like they've learned about consent. Like there's a lot of what we're trying to uncover are what are the good parts, because there's a lot of people who have a lot of negative things to say about these things, but I would argue that there's a dark side for every industry. We can go down that road as well, but there's a lot of good that comes out of these types of things. So that's the research that we mostly do. It's around sexual health and wellness and how to change public perception, especially given a lot of the new laws that are starting to get put in place in the US. But the thing that's the most cutting edge right now, and I'm a advisor on, is Gen AI porn. So this is going to disrupt like the whole industry. I mean, right away, the internet and social media already disrupted the film industry because people then stopped going to video stores and they also just got it for free. So a lot of production studios and a lot of people just were out of work. That's what the internet did. But now generative AI models, all the large natural language processing and the large language models have entered the industry. And now that we can, so it's really like these interactions, the digital interactions and the Gen AI porn. Like it's this guy, what he's working on right now is, so if we're live right now and I just wanted to change my hair color and the shirt I'm wearing, I could do that in a snap. I just click, 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 and now I'm in BDSM gear. Click, click, click. Now I've got a cowboy outfit on. Like whatever the person wants you to be in that moment, you can click a couple buttons and it immediately changes everything that you're wearing and your hair color. I could take my glasses off and it would know to fill in the space. Like it's incredible. It's incredible what can be done.
Wow, it's a brave new world and it moves so fast. And and every new technology, of course, disrupts everything that came before it. I can only imagine I know what the AI language models are doing to the internet, but as the video and generative AI video kind of comes, it'll be interesting to see what's next. I know there was like on Instagram, there's multiple kind of like models that are actually AI generated images, and they've gained hundreds of thousands if not millions of followers before people started to realize that it's not even a person, it's just
it's
an
so
AI.
real. But it does also help people who are in the industry, because you don't always have to be present for the content. Like if you have an OnlyFans account, you could do all sorts of stuff and still make money without having to be there live. Like when you do camming, it's live. So you got to be sitting there doing the, like, imagine you're sitting on Zoom, open Zoom all day, every day. That's your job. Of course, they make a ton of money doing it. But there's a lot of people like, listen, I have a job. So I still want to do my OnlyFans stuff, but I also have my regular job. So how do I do that? And Gen AI is very helpful there.
Well, and I'm surprised at how staggering the numbers are, because things like OnlyFans it's like a kind of new thing. It's been around a few years now, but OnlyFans has kind of it's more popular than porn now because it's more interactive, it's more personal.
Yeah.
So I'd like to know the psychology behind wanting to be in a romantic relationship with something you know is AI or a robot, because that's not personal.
Hmm.
Like I'm
Yeah.
confused as
The
to
rationale for why you would want to say have a replica or AI avatar relationship with versus a full-on sex robot, that it there's a lot of reasons why people get into sex robots and sex dolls too. By the way, they're quite elaborate,
oh
as you
yeah.
had mentioned before. Um, and sometimes it's a social factor. Like not everybody is can go out and make friends and are comfortable out in society and interacting with people. Some people have had very abusive history, relationship after relationship, just a lot of trauma. They still want to have something or someone in their life, but they can't manage another human. Sometimes there's disability issues, so there's a lot of
Mm.
people who are disabled who want to continue with the sex life but can't in the normal way because they, for whatever reason, various reasons. And so there's some people who also um, use them for that purpose. They're not quite yet walking and talking, but it's going to converge, right? If you take what's the technology that they're working, what they focused on first was getting the dolls to be really realistic, to look as real as possible. So that means like even making skin that is not perfect, and having the hair feel really, so the feel and the texture really, it's as close to a real human as you can get. But they're heavy, and they can't stand up and walk around yet. But if you once Boston Dynamics, if you to put these two things together, which it will happen, then you've got something interesting. And companion robots are coming anyway, so soon it won't be long where you go into a restaurant and there's a not what do you call it? Not a hostess, but a robot hostess
Wow.
or different things like that.
Yeah.
So that is all that is inevitable. This is all coming. Um, but yeah, some people just also like the novelty. They're like, I've done every sex toy. Like, what else can I do? I've got money. I wanna try this or that. But it generally has more things to do with I don't fit into normal society as it stands, and I'm having a hard time finding a partner. And so this is the next best thing.
Hmm.
And I guess the dog and a cat just not cutting it.
Yeah, I just when we talk about this, and when I think about the history of what I consider like sex technology, like sex toys and rubber dolls and all this sort of stuff, traditionally it seemed to be more about like actually getting off and sex. Where now it seems like the technology has got to a point where it can be about companionship and romance and love
Yeah.
and and all of these things. Is that where you see the technology going and this changing and evolving into?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, yes, but there are plenty of researchers exploring concerning things about that. Some people are worried that maybe some men might use a sex robot to abuse. And then there's other people who might say, okay, well, it's better that they abuse a robot than a real person.
Mm,
So maybe an outlet is okay.
mm,
And then there's others like, no, it's still. There's also people who, and this has actually been 10 years now, this is in debates whether robots should have rights, um, and like legal rights,
mm,
in these kinds of circumstances. That wasn't the impetus for them to start, but just they were forward thinking in like, okay, eventually robots are going to have some kind of agency, and so we have to figure out how we're going to manage that. And yeah, so it's a complex situation. Some people think that it will degrade society, meaning if you can't have real relationships, then everybody's going to not have real relationships, and it's like this slippery slope where then nobody has a real relationship with anybody. Na na na. Um, I don't see a world where that happens. We love human interaction. Like
mm.
there's
Right.
there's no doubt about that. just some people don't know how to deal with human
Yeah.
interaction.
I don't know. There's so many sci-fi movies that we seem to be catching up with. And when you describe like these cyborg like sex dolls that have realistic skin and artificial intelligence in their minds that allow them to probably be smarter than the three of us combined, it sounds an awful lot like a movie like Blade Runner. I don't know if you've seen that movie, but it's like my brain can't comprehend what it's going to be like 50 years from now, like when my children and our children are adults dealing with this stuff. Even in that, 15 years it'll take for that to happen, or 20 years,
Yeah.
it's going to change so much. Like this future that you're describing, how far away do you think we're like, how fast is this developing, and when is this stuff going to actually exist?
I mean, the companion robots are moving pretty quickly. Like if you just want to talk about robotics industry entirely in general, the precision is monumental. Like it's that you can pick up and poke out and move around like the littlest things, right? I mean, think about even just the manufacturing line of chips
Hmm.
and things like that. Like this is extremely micro, small robotic movements. So the technology is there. It's a matter of putting together the the dolls with the tech and the AI. So getting it to move around and have the AI and look realistic. So it is converging, and it's not yet. Like there is no sex robot that has all three of these components yet. It's in its infancy, you could say, um, but they'll have that sorted out in 10 years for sure.
Yeah, one of the things I was going to ask is what industries are driving this technology, because it isn't only like the world and sex industry that's driving this. It's also like you mentioned medical uses, of course, military uses, these kinds of things like those dogs and everything. Like typically,
Yeah.
what is driving the creation of these robots, and how much is the sex world influencing it?
Well, I mean, historically, sex has been actually one of the early innovators
Hmm.
of technology. So they were really the first um, group motivated to share files over the internet.
Yeah.
So we could, and then it became videos and all that. So when you look back at how when a new technology comes out, um, the adult industry is the first to jump onto it because it is just so delicious. Like
Hmm.
it can really, really move things along. Especially now that I mean everything's online, right? So the more tech, the better. But I'd say that the recent robotic innovations aren't coming from the adult industry. They're coming from the actual robotics industry. They're coming from academia. They're coming from industrial drones, all of that. So, the Boston Dynamics of the world. And like you said, the medical can be, everybody's using it, right? So it's the tools are there. And then it's just a matter of putting them together to work in such a way. I mean, we already have teledildonics, right? Do you know what that is?
No.
Okay, so teledildonics is when you have a sex toy of some kind that is controlled by an app on a phone. So you could have the app. I could tell you, hey, I've got my device. I've got it in place. I could tell you, like, you can select all these different vibration modes. I could be out throughout the day, and you can just buzz me whenever you want, and you don't have to be here. You could be across. You could be in Africa. It doesn't matter where you are. And so you can. And there's also like new toys now, especially for the camming world, that light up, because the person who's paying for the cam, so they have control. She's got the device. They want to make sure that she's really using it for real. Um, they want her to actually get off, and they want to watch. So this thing lights up to let them know that things
Okay.
are actually really really happening here. It's not only for that; it's a fun feature. But so there's already like like telemedicine. It's based on the word like telemedicine and things like that.
Wow. It just boggles me how quick all this is happening. And I feel like I've blinked in the last 10 years or whatever. Like so much of this stuff has
Yeah.
changed. We've talked a bit about a lot of the positives that are coming out of this. People are having access to romance and relationships that maybe they struggle to find in the quote unquote real world. But what are the negatives? We didn't talk too much about that. Like when you're doing this research, or when other researchers are looking at this, what is kind of the worst outcome? If this is uncontrolled, what's going to go wrong?
I mean, if you're talking about just the robot side of thing, there's a lot of trepidation and fear about robots, especially combined with AI.
Hmm.
And as soon as ChatGPT came out, now everybody's just put two and two together, like, oh my God, what's going to happen? They really are going to come for us. Um, it's it's interesting because we actually can control exactly how we don't have to build them in any kind of way. Like we can control how we build them and how these things operate. So there's that.
But what about like the psychological side of it? Like, people can be addicted to porn, and maybe it changes their view of, the world around them when they're not sitting in front of their computer or whatnot. As this stuff develops and it's even more advanced and more realistic, is there a fear that it's just going to forever break some people's ability to connect with human beings on a romantic level or a sexual level?
I believe that there are people who do fear that. It's hard to say. Like I said, we have control over how we do that. But there's always going to be people. There's a subset of people who reject most things sexual, anyways. And so those people will always have those concerns, and there's really nothing we can do to quell those concerns. Now, when it comes to camming or OnlyFans type of work, some of the concerns there are that there's something called doxing and capping, which is when, say, I'm a cam model and we're camming together, and then secretly you record. So doxing is when you release someone. So most cam models have a stage name. It's not their real name. But some people go and they try to find out who this is. You take the face and then you run it through some applications, and you'll find out, who they are through their Facebook or different social media account, and then they release that information to the public,
Mhm.
which is very dangerous. Obviously, especially in areas where sex work is illegal. Um, and then there's capping, which is someone, as we're camming, you're actually secretly recording my session, and then you go and you take that video and you put it up on Pornhub or whatever, and you make money off of it. So that's definitely like not a good thing. It's not a good thing for the model. It's not a good thing for society when people are doing that. There's also some concerns about porn addiction, which in research has been completely debunked. There is no porn addiction.
Hmm.
It's people actually have, anyone who has ever been in a therapist's office or research, I've done a research study. It What they ultimately have is a anxiety or depression diagnosis. It's not actually porn addiction. You can have compulsive behavior, which is something else, but it's been debunked. So that was a major concern. There's major concerns about um, people under 18 getting access to all, because it's so ubiquitous. Like, there's no firewall between you and Pornhub. My kids could go look it up if they knew how to do that. So that's where a lot of the US regulations are coming in. And so that's a concern for people. I certainly don't want my kids accessing information before I think that they're ready. But most people don't want their kids to see it at all, ever, right? Not even just to open the conversation. But the problem with that is it's we get a baby with the bathwater situation, because then anybody who actually does any kind of sex education, even if it's STIs, pregnancy, or any kind of woman, menopause, vagina, whatever, gets canceled on social media. So it's very, very difficult to
Hmm.
get science-backed, informative information out to the public through social media, because nobody reads anymore. You have to be on social media to spread the message. And so it's like, how do you And there's some laws in the US called Sesta Fosta, which is why all the tech companies have to block it, not because they really want to, but because they legally have to. So it's kind of Project 2025 type people who want to just cancel it altogether, because there's plenty of ways that we can protect access without completely banning it altogether. But and then there's there's still some coercion in the world where people are forced to make porn. They're forced, even domestic porn. Like, I mean, domestic porn, I don't know if you've noticed, but has exploded in the last 10 years. Like, it's just
What do you mean by domestic porn? What does that mean?
like you and your wife, you just film yourselves doing something in your bedroom, then you put it up online.
Oh, okay.
People love it. People love it. It's so authentic, right?
That's
It's
like
just,
half of what's on Pornhub.
yeah, pretty much.
It's like a family
Well,
business.
and
I've just never heard of it as domestic porn. I've never heard that term, but I understand exactly what you're talking about now.
I've read lots over the last few years that states this, and I don't know what constitutes this generation, but they said, like, I'll say anyone born 2000 and after, just because porn has always been so accessible, past generation of new adults, they have porn brain, and they think that porn is what sex should be like. And porn is more so a fantasy, and they're having a lot of trouble in sexual, like, relationships, and there's a staggering amount of like erectile dysfunction in young people, and it's they blame porn because of it. And I can see that, because if you were born in, say, 2000, you grew up with the internet and porn just being available. You didn't have to steal a magazine from the gas station or from your dad or whoever.
Yep.
And I can definitely see how that's a thing. Porn brain.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some psychological things to overcome. Like, if you think about, let's say you were raised in a family who was very wealthy, and then as of 12 years old or 15 years old, all of that wealth just went away. Like, you wouldn't really know what to do with yourself because you're being accustomed to something that's so different. And to me, this is a failure of the system. So parents have to be brave enough to have the conversations at the right age, which is really like 12, 13 type of age. Like, you have to start those conversations. And then schools, because sex education is extremely politicized. It's
Oh, hell
almost
yeah.
nearly canceled. So you don't get proper sex education in school. You don't get your sex education from your chicken parents. So then what do? You talk to your friends or you look online. Like, that's it. And then it makes good sense that you would look at, like, even when I was younger, looking at porn, it's like, it felt intimidating because, like, she's so beautiful and she looks perfect, and I'm not ever going to do that and look like that. So then it's, you would sort of feel like inferior. But then I grew up and I realized that that's actually not the case, and that, yeah, it's a fantasy. It's not real life. People should not look to porn for education. To see how it's done. This is the same way that you wouldn't go watch a movie with guns and then go buy a gun and, like, start shooting it and thinking that you understand,
Rolling
like,
around
how,
and
yeah, like, it's so,
Even domestic porn is performative.
well,
yeah,
any kind of thing that's filmed. Like, I remember as a teenager, we would go skateboarding all the time, and we'd just be skateboarding at some area. Every so often, someone would bring a video camera, and whatever we were doing, it was all of a sudden it was times 10
Yeah.
because something was being filmed. But
yeah.
yeah, this idea of you mentioned sex education being politicized, and as a result, it being more difficult to have sex education happen in schools and whatnot. Of course, the kids are going to continue to talk on the playground or figure it out for themselves online, and that's certainly
Yeah.
dangerous.
You kind of want to do things that you're not supposed to do. So there's something fun about looking at porn or doing those things that, that's just, it's part of the process.
But
No, I don't know.
that's
Maybe
why
I'm a Gen Xer, so I don't know. We had no parenting.
that's why Sex with Sue was so great. Sue, was it
Hmm.
Johansson? Because
Yes.
she was educational, but she was also nasty, so it was like perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Exactly.
I'm going to start asking about the work on your book, but before I do, Madeline, anything else you want to ask about before we start getting into what's next,
I
books, where to go?
I just want to backpedal a little bit about the legality of like AI porn. So with AI becoming so prominent and so realistic, um,
Yeah.
you can make AI of anyone. There was an incident maybe 2 years ago now, a year and a half ago. There was, and I can't remember his name, but there was a Twitch streamer who he was doing something. He was doing like a Twitch stream, and he brought up his computer, and on one of the little windows that was open, he had AI porn, but it was an AI of two other female Twitch streamers that he had like
Ooh,
plugged it, whatever.
yeah.
So it was people that he knew. He's also married or has a girlfriend or whatever, and he like made an apology video, and his wife was just like in the background. It was so weird.
And then fucking at 2 a.m., I've been watching so much fucking, I've been reading so much fucking AI stuff. I'm reading all this fucking stuff about AI and fucking deepfake music, deepfake art, and everything. And I'm in these fucking discords, and I just feel so embarrassing to me. But I was on fucking Pornhub, dude. I was on a fucking regular ass normal fucking website, and there was an ad. There's an ad on every fucking video for this fucking. So I know other people must be clicking it because it's on every fucking video for fucking deepfake thing. And then I click it, and I'm fucking in this fucking rabbit hole. And at 2 a.m., I don't know. I got morbidly curious, and I click something, and I it's just fucking it's gross. It's gross, and I'm sorry. I really am. I really fucking am. It's not. I don't know. It's so embarrassing. So embarrassing.
So that's gotta be, it's not illegal to take someone's
Oh, no, it
likeness.
is.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah,
'Cause I'm thinking of
absolutely.
like
Absolutely.
there's laws against like revenge porn and stuff, and this seems like it's almost falling in
Yes.
that, but
Okay.
you probably know
Yeah.
better,
No,
Bobby.
there's about 8 laws that cover one very specific revenge porn. But revenge porn is a little bit different than just stealing someone's likeness.
Right.
But there's the copyright laws. There's all sorts. The difficulty is discovering it and then pursuing the legality of it because lawyers aren't free. So there's other barriers to contend with, but the laws are there.
Okay.
I don't know if they're strict enough, in my opinion. But doxing and capping is illegal. It depends on the country. But in the U.S., definitely those laws are all present, and it's mostly because they want to build around canceling sex altogether. So they're very happy to make all those laws, even though a lot of people do benefit from it. But even if you look at ChatGPT, they started to use Scarlett Johansson's voice, and then when she found out, she's like, no, you can't have my voice. So there's a bit of kerfuffle over that. But yeah, there's some problematic issues there. That's why a lot of people, like the AI gen porn companies that exist right now, they're in their infancy. And some of the big players are we're just taking the time to see how the regulations roll out, especially in Europe, because European regulations are always more stringent than everywhere else. So it's sort of, you can predict how the US regulations will go based on what Europe does. And they are currently working on those kinds of things. So we're just kind of waiting in the wings to see how the regulations come through with Gen AI porn. A lot of the big companies, but the one that I'm collaborating with, his whole premise compared to everybody else is he's ethical. So he's not training on data that he doesn't have access, that he doesn't have permission to use, and all sorts of other tenets for how he can establish that he's doing it from an ethical point of view. So there are those of us out there that are trying to do it right, but there's always going to be bad players. And again, that's not unique to adults. There's bad players in every industry.
So we started our conversation with your background. You talked about your prior book. You mentioned going to school as for sociology while working on an upcoming book So where professionally, where are you at now? Did you complete your second book? Is it available? If not, when will it be available? So tell me what
It,
else is
it
going on.
is very close
Okay.
to being finished. So it's written. I'm just working with some people to get it published. Like I need to get edits and work on the cover and the layout and all of that. So it's sort of it's at the end point, and I'm tired of reading it. So I'm done.
Okay.
When you've read the stuff just over and over again, like it's been I think almost
For at least
two and a
3
half,
years.
3 years. Yeah, it's been a while I've been working on it because I'm also working full time. I've got the research institute, I've got the conference, and then I've always got another side project as well. Like it's just I'm stupid and I bite off more than I can chew, and then it takes me longer to finish things.
For people who are listening to this and they're fascinated by your work and want to read the second book when it's available, how do they find you and find your research and follow along with, further developments in this?
Well, I am at Bobbi Bidochka across all platforms. I'm the only one in the world, so I get my own handle without any underscores or funny numbers. So just across the board, that's where I am. I am going to be getting more on social media. People will start to see more of me out there in the metaverse.
I want to thank you for joining us for this episode of Nighttime. Now, I'm going to start wrapping things up here, but before I do, let me end with some thanks. First, a huge thanks to Bobbi for joining us here tonight. The rapid advancements we're seeing in technology are a little bit exciting, a lot terrifying, but also a lot inevitable. I never considered the way it would change sex and romance, and Bobbi, I appreciate you sharing your knowledge and experiences with us tonight. I also want to give a thanks to Madeleine Klein for joining me. Next, a big thanks to LJ from the Dystopian Simulation Radio podcast, who provides our intro and outro voiceovers. And then lastly, but most importantly, a massive thank you to every one of you listening to Nighttime, as without your interest and your support, Nighttime would be as pointless as it would be impossible. Now, on the topic of support, let me thank the newest subscribers to our premium feed. Maureen and Deborah, I appreciate you. And for anyone else who'd like to support the show, you can do it in a variety of ways. First of all, a premium feed subscription costs just a couple dollars a month, and that money funds the creation of new episodes. But the premium feed will also give you those episodes 2 days early, give them to you ad-free, and give you access to a full back catalog of episodes. And if for whatever episodes that sounds like something you're interested in, you can go premium right now at patreon.com/nighttimepodcast. And even if you don't want to go premium, you can still support the show by simply sharing this episode on social media and letting all your like-minded friends know why they should listen. If you have any story ideas, want to give feedback on the show, or would like to contact us, you can do all that and more at nighttimepodcast.com/contact. We hope to hear from you. But until then, take care of each other, hug your loved ones tight, and let me know if you see anything weird.
The Nighttime Podcast is written, hosted, and produced by Jordan Bonaparte.